Okay, here we are. Hello, everybody. And this is Between Two Teachers, where we talk about all of the education issues there are at state, federal, and local levels, and also give you some call to action and share best practices and things that are going on that you need to know about. So this is our 196th episode. So we're getting close to 200. And today's a Tuesday, May the 2nd. And my name is Consuelo Lara.
And my name is Madeline Cronenberg. And as always, we will begin with our land acknowledgement. We pause to acknowledge that we've gathered on the ancestral territory of Huichin, which is part of the unceded land of the Chochenyo and Karkin speaking Muwekma Ohlone people. We remember their continued connection to this region and give thanks to them for allowing us to live, work, learn, and pray on their traditional homeland, and offer our respect to their elders and all Ohlone people of the past and present. And we continue to support their efforts to become recognized as a tribe by the federal government. That recognition has not been available to them for some time, and it needs to be for them to be able to get the benefits of that recognition. So that you can fight and you can continue to join that by going and Googling Justice for Muwekma, and you can learn about how you can help making sure that the Muwekma Ohlone people do become recognized. And I know you were in Washington last week, and so
Yes.
part of that is you became aware of that.
Yeah, I went to the museum, the Native American Museum of the Smithsonian, and one of the things you see, it's a beautiful, beautiful, it's 4 stories, and they have just all of these tribal flags of sovereign nations. And so they're recognized by the federal government. It's very, very important for them to be recognized. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And they have all of the tribes there, and they talk about the history, things here's some myths about Native American history and culture. And but yeah, you're very aware that there are these different tribes, and they're recognized by the federal government. So
right, and the Muwekma Ohlone people continue to be discriminated against by not being recognized.
yes.
Right. So for whatever all the legal complications may be, we need to continue in the struggle to support them in achieving that recognition. The other thing for us in education is that we need to make sure that we teach the story of the Muwekma Ohlone people and the tribal communities to our children, and teach it with accuracy and not the way it's been taught for many years. And one of the places to get the curriculum for that is at the East Bay Regional Parks website. So we link to that. You can just Google it if you're interested in it, and you can find curriculum for 4th graders to learn the true story, the story that has now been vetted and collaborated with by the tribal leaders. So that is our beginning, and we once again welcome you and ask you to join us, to subscribe to the channel, and to share out our episodes. The big news here in California this week is a local story. Actually, we're reaching the point where once again there's going to be it looks like there's going to be a strike in Oakland, a teacher's strike in Oakland, which is a really sad strike. Remember, when you have a strike, there aren't any winners here. There are only losers, because it's just really a failure to come to an agreement that you're going to come to.
Eventually, yeah, always.
You always will come to it. You always will come to it. But if you this is using a hammer to get to it. So they're working on it. Hopefully when we come back next time, we can tell you that they averted the strike. But at this moment, it doesn't look like they're going to avert the strike. It looks like there will be another teacher strike in Oakland, this coming Thursday. So that remains to be seen. The other things, well, we should get an update on your trip to Washington, and then I'll follow up with what's happening in Sacramento.
Well, my trip to Washington was with the California School Board Association and CCBE, the California County Board, along with them. So it's like a partnership. So CSBA actually partnered with AXA as well. So they were able to form and really organize. It was just so well put together. That's the thing that I found great. And I think this is just the second year that they've done it. And so they're going to do this each year. And one of the big things was Becerra. He came and spoke and he got a standing ovation. He was wonderful. And, there were comments like about infrastructure money or about health money, or when they would talk about these pockets of money and they would say, oh, and there's money in there for schools. You guys should look into it. So apparently there's money where it's not specifically just for schools, but there's part of other things. So people are not looking, they go, you got to look at this. So somebody's got to get on that, and we need to start getting the money that's laying around there for schools. So that was one kind of thing. So I was able to go to Josh Harder, Garamendi, and Mark Desagnier to visit and talk to them about the various proposals or the federal priorities of CSBA and AXA. And I'm just going to let you know what they are. Special education, very big priority, and to follow through on their funding promise.
That is the biggest one, because that has been a total betrayal. That promise was never kept. And that promise, the failure to keep that promise hurts our most vulnerable children, just flat out hurts them.
Yes. And I'm going to talk about the priorities, but one of the priorities for the public is students with learning disabilities, disabled students. And so this is what the general population wants, this support. So they need to follow through on that one. Another one was increased mental health prevention and intervention programs. That is so important.
Now, see, that sort of goes along with safety, but not explicitly, right? I mean, that's part of the safety conversation, but you really didn't have anything else. That's the closest you came to a safety conversation, right?
Yeah, there was no discussion about the guns or gun violence in schools. I mean, it was just glaringly absent. And that's really unfortunate, because this is where it's happening, in the schools, for crying out loud. So I don't know. Well, I do have an opinion about that. CSB seems to be under the impression they need to show both sides. So I think they were trying to be middle of the road in this, which makes no sense, because we're trying to push public education forward, and that's not the way to do it. So maybe that was part of it. I don't know. Enhanced student nutrition was a big one also. Recognizing the amount of sodium and sugar there are in the lunches. So that supporting enhancing that's a big one. I'm all for that also, and about gardens and food and nutrition. So then mental health. Oh, universal meals. Maintain and expand broadband access. Of course, since the pandemic, that's always been a very big piece. Also, enhance cybersecurity and protect data and privacy for schools, students, and staff. So this is a safety issue, because a lot of times the violent actions, they were using the internet to set all this up, and they even talk about it, sometimes brag about it, that they're going to be doing things like this, and they've been caught because of cybersecurity. So this is really important, and it is part of the security technology that we need to put into our schools now. It needs to be just a big part of it. So enhancing that for, I like it says schools, students, and staff. So it's for everybody, to protect everybody.
Well, there's this whole thing of the threats that are made online, where students threaten each other online. And so there's, all of those issues around that. Who is supposed to know that? How do you control it? What responsibilities do you have to do that? I mean, also that has to do with mental health. There are children who become suicidal, depressed, bullied. All of those things can happen online.
Yeah, and I think we talked one time about the red flags. Like the staff and teachers, the adults have to be educated about what those red flags are. Because I think too many times we go, oh, well, oh, that's no big deal. And we got to
Right. That's just being a teenager, right? There are all of these, excuses you can make, but
you've got to know what those red flags are and be able to follow through on it. So that's a big part of it as well. So I guess they kind of skirted around those
yeah,
issues.
yeah.
Support educators and reduce the shortages. I didn't feel like that's one of our big issues. And I didn't really feel like there was anything new other than, providing incentives around recruiting individuals. And it seemed like more support for the universities to keep doing what they're doing, but that doesn't really put teachers in the classroom like today, which is
What they're doing right now is their enrollment in these programs is declining.
yeah. So you're gonna listen, you've got to recruit in high school because you want quality teachers, you want teachers for whom it's a calling, where they would never want to do anything else. That was me. I knew when I was a little girl, I wanted to teach. And no matter what happens, no matter what storm, you're going to keep teaching. You're not going to quit the profession because this is who you are. That's the kind of teachers you want.
That's
They're in
right.
high school. They're in high school. And so
That's
let's
right.
bring them along. And that's where you got to start. And that's what we're pushing.
Right. That's what we're pushing. And that's really where you nurture them,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
you can also figure out in high school that you don't want to do it. And that's
Exactly.
good, right? That's when you can figure these things out. And we really need to not walk away from that, but to look at education as a profession, that we can have apprentices. You can have an apprenticeship. You do the famous teacher cadet programs, which exist in high schools and need to be reborn and grown in our schools, because that's where our student teachers are nurtured and grown.
And these things kind of intersect. Like you could have programs for special ed paraprofessionals, which are a demand. And so those you get a certificate for, or so there's so many ways that this could help other areas as well. So
Right.
yeah, we've got to push those. Eliminate the Social Security penalties. Now, I know we've been
Big.
talking about that for a long time. And so they've been pushing it. It looks pretty good. Finally, how many years of this fight been going on?
Oh,
So
long time.
see, support HR 82 by Representative Garrett Graves and S 597 by Sherrod Brown to repeal the government pension onset and windfall
That's it.
elimination provisions. And so that's really important. And then there was one on the Rural Schools Act to secure and renew their the partnership strongly urges congressional support of legislation to reauthorize and secure the Rural Schools Act when it is introduced. So there's more support for them. They have special kinds of needs, the smaller districts for sure,
Right.
and small schools. And then advocate for an alternative school status accountability waiver. Urges the U.S. Department of Education to provide California an exception that will allow the continued use of alternative metrics within California's accountability system for alternative schools, which means court schools and our juvenile halls, so that they can continue to get the resources that they need. So I understand this was pulled but that it's going to come back maybe stronger pretty soon. So that's one that the county office is really watching. Yeah, so those were the ones. Those were the big priorities. And I was also able to mention about our housing convening we hope to put together, and got a lot of enthusiasm about that. So I think, and oh, and then the lake research. Oh, I have to talk about that. There's the lake research talked about, well, all kinds of things. They do these polls. The one that was most interesting to me were about what are the proposals and what are the priorities here in California. They'll do the national and the California. And the one that stuck out to me the most were the a proposal. What kinds of proposals do you support? And the one at the top for California was to increase job skills and workforce training opportunities in high school, like apprenticeships and internship opportunities. And there's a lot more, but that to me was my biggest takeaway. And the public is concerned about disabled students and about safety and about hiring teachers with well-paid salaries. That's also in the polls. So a lot of good things will bring up more in the future as well. So yeah, it was great fun. And then at the end, I got to go to the National Smithsonian Native American Museum. So that was amazing. And you can do a self tour with it. I was just looking at the link. If there's a way to do a virtual tour, we'll put that in the link. But
Right.
Oh my gosh, it was just an amazing thing to do. And I really enjoyed it. You know, they have these rooms they look just like classrooms. And one thing I saw a lot of at Washington was a lot of kids, a lot of trips, a lot of kids that look very preppy, and they are everywhere at the Capitol, at the museums, and all with notepads. And so you could hold a little class in there. So I'm sure it was like an all day thing. And the cafeteria is delicious. They have great food there too. So that was my trip. I came home exhausted and had to sleep for 2 days, but
Yeah.
I just loved it. And who knows, between two teachers may travel to
You
Washington.
never know. That would
Never
be
know,
lots of
right?
fun. Washington is always a wonderful trip, and and really those museums are every one of them is spectacular in Washington.
Yes.
So we're so glad you went, and that there's a lot going on there. I'm thrilled that they're actually working on the Social Security one at last. Maybe that will finally get done. And it just took a lot of energy on that, and the folks from Move On took ownership of it. That's one of the reasons I think that it became, they grew a big tent around trying to make that happen. So, and that's really what we all have to do. We have to partner with each other and get out of our silos.
Yep.
And build some tents. My big shout out this week is to our new let's see, he's the new head of the Education Committee in California. The California State Assembly Education Committee is led by legislator Al Moritz-Suchy, and he is replacing Mr. O'Donnell, who had been at the head of the Education Committee for a number of years, and who was a former teacher and had done great work in many different areas. But and so I was curious where Mr. Moritz-Suchy was going to land. Well, he has done really well. He apparently was a school board member in Torrance, California. So he wasn't a teacher, but he came from being a school board member, and he's gone up the ranks of seniority and now is the chair of this committee. And his bill is Assembly Bill 938. And this is the one to follow in California right now, because what this bill will do is increase teacher pay 50% by 2030.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing to do. That's a response to the shortage. He wanted to respond to the teacher shortage. And he saw totally right, appropriately, that what you had was people who would have the same amount of education and yet be paid 50% less than their graduates, their fellow graduates in other fields.
That's
So all
excellent.
he's trying to do is have them catch up.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Catching up. That's true.
That's what this is about. This is not like a windfall for them. This is to try to address the fact that we seem to, just take for granted how underpaid teachers are.
Yeah.
So Mr. Marzocchi and the teachers unions, he started with the California Federation of Teachers, because that's the union that he was familiar with in the district where he served on the board. And then of course CTA joined in as to support it. And so now this is, and it went through, it passed through his committee, but it's got to, it has a ways to go. It's not the law of the land by any means, but it is a major step forward in addressing the teacher shortage. I mean, absolutely major step if that could happen. And then you wouldn't have these districts fighting over crumbs, which is, what you have today. We would have something that brings far more equity, because the California community would show that they have a much higher respect for teachers as a profession.
Yes, shout out to him. Absolutely.
Big shout out to him. So we will keep watching him, and thank you all for joining us this week. Next week it'll be 197. This is the end of episode 196. Bye-bye.